Thanks for that, Adam. I'd now like to introduce our keynote speaker for today's session, Victor Dominello, the New South Wales Customer Service Minister. Minister Dominello is a senior minister in the New South Wales government, and in 2019, he was appointed the inaugural Minister for Customer Service. In this role, Minister Dominello has a key focus on digital transformation. Victor firmly believes that the use of real-time data and technology are the most powerful ways to improve quality of life and reduce suffering. Victor is a member of the Crisis Cabinet that has led the New South Wales response to COVID-19. He has had a particular focus on delivering digital solutions, such as the Service New South Wales check-in feature and real-time data analysis to inform the state's response. During his time in the portfolio, Victor has been the driving force behind the rollout of the digital driver licence, the establishment of the $1.6 billion Digital Restart Fund, and the rapid expansion of the Service New South Wales app, including the introduction of new functionality, such as QR code check-ins and notification of COVID-19 test results. Today, Minister Dominello will be talking about the latest initiative from his department, the Smart Places Strategy and Smart Cities Activation Fund, which I know you'll all be very keen to hear about. I'll now hand over to Minister Dominello.
Thanks, Laura. Well, can I also begin by acknowledging country and pay my respects to elders both past and present, and thank you for all the great work and advocacy you're doing. And as Adam said, we're now in a space in Australia where we truly understand the power of digital. Now, I think before digital was seen as something you'd talk about as a lower echelon issue, but now it's right in the centre of decision making, particularly in government, because we've realised that without digital you can't deliver great outcomes, and particularly here in New South Wales, it's been really at the forefront of the work we're doing in terms of the COVID response. Just to piggyback on what you've said, one of the big things we announced last year was the introduction of the Digital Restart Fund. It's $1.6 billion. Now, that's an amount that's to be spent over 3 years or 2.5 years. It's the largest spend for digital restart, I think, definitely in the state's history, I think in the country. We've all got our IT spend, but this is the creme de la creme of IT spend, in the sense that it's designed to encourage initiatives that will inspire and delight our citizens. And I can walk through some examples, but part of the 1.6 includes money for a massive cyber build, 240 mil put aside there. But we've also earmarked $45 million for the Smart Places strategy. Now, that's a co-investment of $45 million, because we want to reach out to organisations outside of the government, whether it's local councils, universities, again, organisations, to come up with their great ideas that will inspire and delight the people of our great state, particularly in the Smart Places realm. And we are 100% engaged on this, and it's the largest investment in terms of smart places, definitely in our state's history, and I think it'd be right up there in terms of the nation. But the thing that we really want to encourage the people out there, the audience members, to do when they're putting in their submission is to be bold in their ambition. There are so many problems that we are facing, so many pain points that we are facing, particularly as consumers or customers, citizens, that we would like to, and that we need to solve through a smart framework. And that's what the 45 million co-investment's all about. In addition to that, New South Wales is embarking on really smarting our infrastructure in a big way. So we've got a pipeline of $100 billion worth of investment and then some in terms of infrastructure in New South Wales, record amounts of money being spent on road, rail, schools, hospital, etc. But in addition, what we've said is, look, for every investment into infrastructure that is above $10 million, you must, as part of your design, embed smart technology. And in relation to IT, we spend on average about $2.5 billion a year on IT. So for every expenditure above $5 million, again, has to embed smart technology. So with $100 billion plus investment in New South Wales, and with a mandate now that for amounts over 10 mil or over 5 mil has to embed smart technology, that's a lot of smart that we're building into New South Wales in terms of the infrastructure. And then, as I said, on top of that, we got the $45 million, which is a genuine collaboration piece with sectors outside. One of the things that really came to light when we're talking about infrastructure is the huge transformation that's taking place, particularly using IoT. So I understand that there's about 2,400 sensors on the iconic Sydney Harbour Bridge. Now, previously, you'd have to get people up there monitoring the bridge on a daily basis, monthly basis, whatever the case may be, with a certain degree of confidence, because you're not going to see everything. But when you've got 2,400 sensors monitoring 800 steel structures, you're monitoring 24/7, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. That's what smarts do. And that way we can use our human brain for more creative projects rather than things that simple sensors can do. And that's where we want to move, and fast, because we know that to maintain our position here in not just Australia, but in the world, we need to really embrace the digital transformation that's taking place. And I'm pleased to say that New South Wales is without a doubt one of the leaders in the world, and definitely leading the Southern Hemisphere when it comes to digital transformation. And you spoke in part were about some of the things that we're doing here in New South Wales, whether it's the service New South Wales transformation that's taken place over the last 7 or 8 years, that has now resulted in us being able to put digital products in the market really fast, such as the COVID check-in feature, such as digital driver's license, such as trade licenses. We're working on birth certificates, digitising those. We're working on e-construction, digital twins. Adam's working on digital twins down in Victoria, but in New South Wales with spatial services, we got the largest digital twin in the world, to our knowledge. And that's only going to get stronger, particularly with the work we're doing around e-planning. Again, world-leading technology on e-planning, and then build on that e-construction, where we will digitise essentially every component of the construction sector to make sure that we then develop a thing called e-property. Because again, in the future, when we're moving away from this two-dimensional realm of phones and iPads, we'll be moving into glasses and then implantables with contact lenses, et cetera, in that realm in 10, 20 years' time, we need to be ready for that. So to do it, we need to digitise. And if we do that successfully now, then again, we'll be the first cab off the rank when it comes to the next wave of technology. And with 5G pretty much on our doorstep, and they're already talking 6G, we need to be there, because that's where future growth and future prosperity lies in the digital realm. So look, I might just stop there, Laura, because I could talk literally 4 days. I think about this all the time. But if you don't stop me here, I will talk for days. But I'd rather listen and be part of a discussion, because it's the dialogue that is most powerful for me, to hear what's on, what people in the audience are thinking, what their dreams and aspirations are, where they think government should be, and what we can do better to deliver on our ambition. So thank you for listening, and I look forward to taking part in a future dialogue now.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Minister. Thank you for your welcoming remarks, and thank you for making yourself available to answer so many questions. I just wanted to remind all of our delegates, we do have the Minister until 1:40, so we've got 20 more minutes of his time that we're really privileged to have. So do feel free to send through your questions to find out a little bit more about what Minister Dominello and his team are doing in New South Wales. As I mentioned in my opening, you can either use the event platform to do that. chat, just look for the Q&A box to the right of your screen. Or if you're watching through Zoom, you can actually use the chat function as well to submit questions. So please do that, because we are very lucky to have so much of the Minister's time. So I might get things kicked off with a question from myself, Minister Dominello. I'm really intrigued to know a little bit more about over the last 12 months, obviously you're doing an incredible amount of work in that digitisation space in New South Wales. Have you found that over the 12 months, as the need has really emerged quite rapidly to be active digitally and to engage in digital ways of doing things, have you found that over the last 12 months it's really actually enhanced and increased the appetite, not just for departments to engage in things like this, but for, I guess, from people and organisations to engage in digital change?
Oh, definitely, Laura. Like, I've been on this journey for a long time, and particularly in Cabinet, when I talk about data and digital and all things of that kind, people just turn off because they just think I'm on another planet. But the penny dropped, I think, during COVID. And without giving too much away, I'm in Crisis Cabinet. One of my favourite discussions occurred when I was agitating for the QR code. And I said, look, we've got to hurry up and get onto QR and fast. And, I had some naysayers in the room saying, look, Victor, if I go to a small business, if I go to a cafe and I've left my phone at home, how am I going to check in? And I said to the minister, look, you've got a bigger problem. If you go to a cafe and you've left your phone at home, how are you going to pay for the coffee? Because, and I guess what that demonstrated to me is that there is still a lot of people out there that were not on the journey. Sure enough, I eventually won the argument. We got the QR codes rolled out, and now this minister is, one of the strongest advocates for the QR codes because they even know what QR stands for. So, but I guess what I'm saying is, there's been a massive transformation that has occurred over the last 12 months, not just here, but in industry alone, in industry as well. I remember going down to Cabargo Hotel. It's a pub down near Bega on the South Coast. And I was speaking to the publican down there, and he was actually very critical of what we were doing around the QR codes, because he said, look, not everyone has got a smartphone. Not everyone knows what this thing is about. And I remember when I introduced it, and we mandated it, he was one of the people saying, this is terrible, it's going to slow things down, people won't want to come in, etc., etc. I went and saw him, about a month ago, and he said, this has been the best thing since sliced bread. And I said, please walk me through it. He said, well, the confidence that people have in the community now. I said, right. Now I said, how was it? And he said, well, look, in fairness, the first couple of weeks was pretty tough because people would come in, particularly some of the oldies, they'd come in, this is his words, not mine, so they'd use their phone, and all they use their phone for is to listen to messages or maybe the occasional text. They had no idea about a QR code. So they'd come in, and now somebody at the bar or one of the attendants would say, look, this is how you use your QR code. They taught them once, now they know forever. And now, according to the publican, a whole lot of them are now just looking for QR codes to see what take a photo of it to see, or take an image of it to see where that QR code will take them. But he said that is digital transformation en masse. So the short answer to your question is absolutely. One of the few silver linings out of this wretched pandemic is we've seen a massive transformation in terms of digital, which enables us to provide far, far greater services to the people of our state.
Absolutely. And I think the proof is really in the pudding, really, with when you look at New South Wales' response to what we've gone through over the last 12 months compared to other states, and what you've had to deal with in terms of incoming travellers and all of that sort of thing, and how the state has handled, the crisis more broadly. And this is coming from a Victorian. So, as I say, the proof is in the pudding. Minister, I wanted to touch on, obviously, there's a huge amount of work happening in that digital transformation space. With all of the work that's happening now, is that really sort of laying the groundwork for what is going to roll out with the Smart Places strategy that you're rolling out? And I know you probably don't want to go into it too much because you don't want to steal Simon's thunder, who's coming up, our next speaker, who'll be talking about that a little bit. But I just wanted to know, the work that's going in now, is that laying the groundwork? Is that setting things up so that we can roll out this strategy and activation fund more effectively?
Absolutely. I'm in Parliament now, so if you hear bells going off, it's not a fire alarm. Well, I assume it's not a fire alarm. I've got to go for a division. But just before this, I had people in the room and we were talking about, what the future vision for digital New South Wales is. And I explained to them, like, we already had a runway of works. We can't announce it because things change all the time, but already had a runway of works. COVID came in and they sidelined a lot of that because obviously last year was dedicated to our COVID response. But the things that we've got in the pipeline in terms of digital delivery absolutely complements what this fund is going to achieve. It really is going to augment the how should I call it, the digital architecture that we've got in place here in New South Wales.
Fantastic. Thanks, Minister. I do have a question that's come in from our delegate that I'd like to ask. This one is from Darren Kepi, and he's really interested to learn a little bit more about public transport and how you foresee technology transforming the public transport experience of the future.
Great question. It's a pet topic of mine because it frustrates me no end. I think public transport in the future, even now we're on that journey, it's all about real time. It's about visibility and real time and making informed decisions. I'll give you an example. Like I introduced a thing about 5 years ago called Fuel Check. And that was because of a frustration of mine many, many years ago when I was a poor university student and I'd be in my Suzuki Sierra looking for cheap petrol. And I'd be driving up the road, Victoria Road, and I'd be saying, oh, there's some petrol, $1 a litre. But it was still expensive for me. So I'd go next petrol station, it was $1.10. Next one, $1.15. I should have fueled up the first one. Fast forward, 20 years in Parliament, got in a position where I could actually do things. So I created this thing called Fuel Check, which basically says every petrol station, they're already required to display the price of their petrol on the side of the road, because the last thing we want are people going in and out and causing traffic all the time, because I'm not happy with the price. So you display on the side of the road, make an informed decision. Well, I said to the petrol stations and Big Oil at the time, listen, you're already doing that in the real world. I'm now going to require you to do it in the cyber world, i.e. every time you change your petrol price on the side of the road, you're going to tell me, the regulator, so I can put it on an app so I can share it to the rest of the world. And that way we can see real-time pricing on petrol stations. And so I can now, before I get in my car, say, that's where I'm going to fill up because this is 20 cents cheaper than the one, 2 kilometres down the road. And there's a whole lot of functionality around that. Now, the reason I gave that as an example, that's going gangbusters, Fuel Check. I think, 1.4 million downloads, 95% satisfaction rating. The reason I say that is we've got to do the same for a whole range of public transport options and then connect it. Why should I live in Ryde, which is sort of, in between Parramatta and the city. Why should I, when I'm driving between my area, go through 4 council areas, 4 different parking options, 4 different parking apps, a shocking customer experience? If I'm going to go into the city and want to park, I should know in advance where the parking spots are. Or more importantly, there's no parking available. Or if it's a hot day, am I really going to go to Bungan Beach where there is literally no car spots? Or do I think, I'm George Costanza and I'm really lucky and I'll always find that lucky spot? No, it's not going to happen like that. You're normally going to be unlucky when it comes to parking. You're going to be travelling around for an hour. If we can see in real time, we can make better informed decisions. So I would then say, I'm not going to spend an hour driving to the beaches and then another half an hour looking for a park. I will get an Uber or I will get a bus. Same with the hospital. This is what public transport looks like. we're digitising a lot of the elements. Now we've got to bring it and put a customer lens on it, because at the moment it is too fragmented. I'm going to have app fatigue if I'm going to have to download 7 or 10 different apps to navigate my way around a beautiful city. So watch this space, Laura. Watch this space.
Absolutely, we will. There's some really exciting and interesting takeaways from that. I think probably the first one that jumped out to me was the fact that with that fuel checker, you've got people that already need to advise their price anyway. So let's add one small step in of digitizing it so that we can take advantage of the data. And I think there's so many examples, not just in public transport, but in the way that our cities run in general, where we can take advantage of adding in one extra step to sort of create something that's so much more potentially advantageous. And yes, I really like the idea of bringing together the multiple apps, because, and I can sort of see that being the next big thing, because we certainly all do have app fatigue. I'm going to move on to some other questions, because we do have some more that have come through from our delegates. So one here from Peter Tari, who's asked, with the increased adoption of smart technology, how do you keep ahead of the integration and data use challenges from a governmental perspective, given the cost, security, privacy concerns, and also the need to have suitably experienced staff on board, particularly when you're competing with the private sector as well in that space?
That's a great question. Very complex to answer, because there's so many moving parts to it. But if I could sort of answer it in this way, everything I do in the digital realm has to be built on trust. Has to be built on trust, and trust for me is a three-legged stool wrapped around with ethics. So there's you've got to have privacy, security, transparency, and wrapped around with ethics. Once you've got that in place, you've got a stool called trust. And on that, you can build anything you like, quite frankly, because you can bring the public on board. But if you don't bake those in terms of design at the outset, then it truly is going to be one step forward, 10 steps back. And we've seen that time and time again, particularly with digital service delivery, where they did not bake in some of these features. So trust. Second thing is ambition. We need to be bold in our ambition and back it up with money. It's one thing for politicians like me to get up there and just say, we got to be smart, we've got to be digital, we've got to be, we want to be all the oneers, gotters. That doesn't get us there. You've got to actually put money towards it and a good framework around it, such as the Smart Places strategy, because otherwise it's just empty rhetoric. And the reality is, if government puts money behind it, then industry comes on board too, and fast, because you put your money where your mouth is. If the government's just talking the big game and not investing in it, there's only one oar in the water, and that's not good enough. So that's the second thing. And I think when you combine both of those two elements, you build your trust infrastructure, you build your ambition and backed in with money, then that attracts talent. We've seen in Service New South Wales that there are so many people knocking on our door to come and work for government, because they can see that we want to change the world. And they can see that we're not just doing small little digital pieces here. We're doing things that I don't even have the time to start telling you about, that we're doing behind the scenes that is truly groundbreaking in the digital space. And when people see that, they want to be part of that bigger vision. They want to be part of that bigger aspiration. So hopefully I've answered the question, and if I haven't, had to have another go. But that's sort of my framework for driving digital in New South Wales.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I think certainly a lot of our delegates would attest to that fact that you touched on. When government is prepared to put some funding behind things, private industry will follow. They will go where the funding is.
Yeah.
I'll go to another question that we have now. There's one here from Kirsty Whitford, who's asked, Minister, you spoke about the Smart Places strategy and the interest in working outside of government to solve challenges with technology. You mentioned local councils and universities, but is there appetite to work with international companies in the smart space?
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. And, in fact, on the Smart Places Council, the advisory council that we got, Google's there as an example, because we know that, we've got to look abroad. We don't have all the great ideas as much as as much as I think Australia is the best country on earth, we don't have all the knowledge here. So, yeah, if there is a great idea outside, ideally there should be a collaboration with another community organisation. But that's what the advisory council would be there to work on. So put your submission in. The advisory council will no doubt say to you, that's great. Have you thought about working or implementing with this local council or this state organisation or this body? But we'll work that through. But please, if you've got a good idea, you've got a government here that is very ambitious in terms of our digital vision. So, bring it forward.
Brilliant. Thanks, Minister. Some great advice there from international players that might be thinking about getting into the space down under. I've got a question here from Russell Holt, which I think is a nice one that I wanted to put to you. What's a smart community implementation that has impacted you and created delight for you, Minister, as a citizen, not just as a minister and a member of government, but as a citizen on that level?
Something that I enjoy. It's probably around the transport, making my life easier. Like when I was asked to be the Minister for Customer Service, a lot of people said, what on earth is that? Because to my knowledge, I'm the first and only Minister for Customer Service in the world. Governments normally don't focus on putting people first. They focus on delivering education or focusing on policing or focusing on transport. But so we look at people as a fraction rather than looking at it as a whole. We ask people to evolve around us. We're the centre of the universe, whereas it should be the other way around. We're elected to serve you. We should be evolving around you and your needs and your time. So, I do enjoy transport because as I move around, getting that visibility to move from point A to B quickly is the thing that, sparks joy for me. Because, again, that gives me more time to do the things I want to do. And at the end of the day, I'll leave it to the treasurer to put money in your pocket, but my job is to put time back in your day.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we can all agree that anything that buys us a little bit more time in the day is always a good thing. I'm just looking at the time. We're getting close up to when we need to wrap up with you, Minister. So I might just do one final question. And I did quite like this one as well from one of our speakers who'll be speaking on Thursday for the summit, actually. And that's Ben Sinnott. And he's asked, one of the lessons that was learned from the federal Smart Cities and Suburbs program was the need to coordinate across local government departments before and during projects. So Ben was just wondering, with what you're rolling out in New South Wales with the Smart Places Acceleration Program, are you taking any steps proactively to ensure that local governments will be collaborating and working together so that you can actually scale up ideas quickly?
Definitely. So I don't want to steal Simon Hunter's thunder, but absolutely, because I remember when we were designing this package, we took a lot of the learnings from what the feds did, because there were a lot of learnings from that on how we can improve on that model, and we do want to move fast. But more importantly, I'm going to insist on strong data architecture in the design. That's critical. I want to see the metrics on what success looks like. I don't want to see it, 6 months after the event. I want to see it in real time. And I want to be able to make sure that when we design it, it's with a view of we can scale up fast to other councils. So that is 100% in the design thinking of the strategy. But again, I'll let Simon talk to that, because he's fantastic. He is our resident expert on that. And those lessons from the federal experience must be learnt and will be learnt.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's probably a very good place for us to wrap up, and a very nice little lead in there for Simon as well. So thank you for that, Minister. Thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing your time and for sharing so much of your time for our audience questions. We really do appreciate it. We will be watching this space, and we look forward to seeing the things that sort of come out from your department through the program over the next 12 months or so.
Yeah, watch this space, Laura. Lots happening.
Excellent. Thanks, Minister.